4 corrupt, politically motivated prosecutors. One target, Donald Trump. They say they're upholding the law, but a close examination reveals politics of the very worst kind meant to influence the 2024 election. Investigations unprecedented in American history, part of a broader attempt to silence and penalize a president who challenged the status quo.
You have 4 or 5 different prosecutions in different form on different highly aggressive theories and applications of the law. On the eve of an election of the President of the United States, can there be any doubt that there's a sentiment of this is get Trump? Get Trump.
These prosecutions against President Trump, both the criminal prosecution along with the civil fraud prosecution, is blatant election interference. It's Democrat lawfare to take out President Trump. They fear that they can't beat Trump on November 5th, 2024. And so they just want to throw him in prison for the rest of his life. They want to bankrupt him. And if that doesn't work, they want to disqualify him under the 14th Amendment with a bogus legal theory. And the people who pretend like they're protecting democracy are using republic-ending tactics to take out the leading presidential candidate.
A unanimous Supreme Court ruled that these partisan efforts to take Trump off state ballots were illegal. But that's not stopping these prosecutors.
The key tell that this is all political is that these prosecutors waited 30 months to bring these unprecedented indictments against a former president.
Let's meet the 4 prosecutors. Jack Smith. Heading Joe Biden's weaponized criminal division at the Department of Justice, Smith is on a mission. But it's not a mission for honest justice. It's a fanatical get Trump philosophy that is driving him.
Jack Smith is very political. He's very partisan. He hates Donald Trump. He's got a long history with trying to get Trump. This is a guy who will stop at nothing to manipulate the situation in order to get what he wants politically.
This Jack Smith, to drop this hammer right after dropping the other hammer on the Mar-a-Lago's case, I mean, he's out for blood. And now he's just on a mission to take out Donald Trump. It's very clear.
He's not pursuing justice or the idea that no one is above the law. He's trying to influence your vote with this case.
While Smith prosecutes Trump for having presidential papers at Mar-a-Lago, the Justice Department takes no action against Biden for having vice presidential and Senate papers in open boxes strewn across his garage. And Biden told his ghostwriter where he could find the classified papers.
Evidence included an audio-recorded conversation during which Mr. Biden told his ghostwriter that he had, quote, just found all the classified stuff downstairs, end quote. When Mr. Biden said this, he was a private citizen speaking to his ghostwriter in his private rental home in Virginia. We also identified other recorded conversations during which Mr. Biden read classified information aloud to his ghostwriter.
Well, it is a double standard. I mean, number one, President Trump is covered by the Presidential Records Act, where then Vice President and then Senator Joe Biden was not. So he has a right to those documents. What we see again is that Joe Biden gets off, Donald Trump gets the book thrown at him, and it's very plain for the American people to see this. 2 ex-officials with classified documents, one gets the book thrown at him, one gets off scot-free, and it's not a hard case to make for the American people to see how differently these 2 men are being treated.
After failing to get Trump as one of the lead attorneys in the Mueller-Russia collusion investigation, Smith will stop at nothing to get his target, including prosecutorial misconduct, and forcing Trump attorneys to testify against him in violation of attorney-client privilege.
Jack Smith takes very hard-charging, high-risk legal tactics in his cases. He forces attorneys to testify against their clients. It's a bedrock constitutional principle of the attorney-client privilege that clients can get candid advice from their attorneys, and they don't have to worry about prosecutors or other government officials hauling in their attorneys to testify against them.
Smith's case is built on novel legal theories and a shredding of a president's First Amendment rights to protest an election and speak out as a private citizen.
There is no one doing more damage to the First Amendment than Biden special counsel Jack Smith. They are eviscerating the First Amendment with this bogus legal theory that they're using to go after Trump on January 6th, where they're trying to criminalize clearly protected speech and conduct. You are allowed to object to presidential elections in America, both under the Electoral Count Act of 1887 and the First Amendment. You are allowed as a criminal defendant to speak out against the judge, against the prosecutor, against the process, against the witnesses. That is protected by the First Amendment. If there's anyone on the planet who needs the ability to speak out, it is a criminal defendant who believes he's being politically targeted by his enemies.
Jack Smith's prosecution of Donald Trump will chill every future president, every future leader from expressing themselves about the operation of government and whether it's lawful or not, and whether there are forces at work that are trying to undermine our American Constitution and our values and our way of life. And when you chill free speech, you seriously undermine our ability as a government to act in a transparent, open, and honest way.
And Smith's prosecution team tried to coerce a witness by threatening the judgeship application of his attorney.
Jack Smith's top deputy is Jay Bratt. Jay Bratt stands credibly accused of threatening Walt Nauda's attorney, Stanley Woodward. Walt Nauda is a co-defendant of President Trump in the Mar-a-Lago case. He's a longtime personal aide of President Trump, and Jack Smith named both President Trump and Walt Nauda as co-defendants in the Mar-a-Lago case. And Jay Bratt allegedly told Stanley Woodward, the attorney to co-defendant Walt Nauda, that essentially Stanley Woodward's application to be a DC judge could be in jeopardy if Walt Nauda didn't turn on President Trump. It wasn't that explicit, but any judge, any reasonable observer who would hear these allegations would say that that is a threat. That is a highly inappropriate threat. It's obstruction of justice.
But this is nothing new for Smith, who was accused of prosecutorial misconduct in the past.
Jack Smith is the prosecutor who will try to go after any possible thing. And frankly, he's somewhat of a lunatic. We saw this with how he went after Bob McDonnell, the former governor of Virginia, and that case had to be thrown out. At the end of the day, the reason why Merrick Garland chose Jack Smith is because Jack Smith will do anything, and I mean anything, to try to get a conviction.
It was not only my case, but it was John Edwards. It was the Lois Lerner investigation of conservatives. He had a lot of high-profile people where I think this was his era. I think he's overzealous and over-aggressive and willing to extend the law to the point to get a win, and that's absolutely wrong.
In a 2019 complaint and request for investigation by the respected legal firm Mayer Brown, evidence was found of prosecutorial misconduct by Smith, including improper media leaks, illegal wiretaps, concealment of exculpatory evidence and impeachment evidence, destruction of evidence, and introduction of false testimony. And according to Congressman Jim Jordan, chair of the House Committee on Oversight, Smith was the leading legal voice in the Obama administration urging the IRS to improperly target conservative organizations. Smith was likely promoted by Obama and Biden due to his history of going after Republicans. And it's a family business, too. Smith's wife donated to Biden and produced a fawning documentary over Michelle Obama and another attacking conservatives.
Jack Smith's wife produced a documentary on the Obamas, right? That seems a pretty cozy relationship that the special counsel who Merrick Garland hand-selected to take out President Trump is married to a Democrat activist who has a very cozy relationship with Barack and Michelle Obama, producing a documentary and donating to Biden and Obama's political campaigns.
They would have been wiser to have an independent prosecutor who is truly, purely independent of one political party or the other. I don't think the prosecutor should be someone who's got a long track record as a Democrat. I think there are many, many prosecutors out there who are apolitical, and that's what you want. That's what we should have, so that you rise above those questions. I don't think Jack Smith fits that independent definition.
What makes Jack Smith so biased is he brings these novel, which is another way of saying bogus, legal theories, untested legal theories, and these high stakes cases where you're going to try to take out a former president and the leading presidential candidate under a bogus legal theory. A bogus legal theory that it's somehow a crime to object to a presidential election. If it were illegal to object, Democrats would be in jail for objecting to Republican wins in 1968, 2000, 2004, and 2016. Objections are allowed by the Electoral Count Act of 1887. Twisting arms politically is allowed by the First Amendment. And if it were a crime to be a jerk, every politician in Washington, D.C., with very few exceptions, would be in jail.
Then there's Fani Willis, the Democrat activist district attorney of Fulton County, Georgia, who has used her indictment of Donald Trump to raise money for her campaign.
As you know, she put up a website just a few days before coming out with this indictment, bragging about going after President Trump. This investigation started back in 2 years ago, and she's waited until President Trump is back in the political race.
For Fani Willis to campaign and to raise money on the basis of, I will prosecute a particular individual, that's wrong. There were no facts established. There was no grand jury investigations. It's based upon suspicion, and prosecutors don't make commitments based on suspicions. Prosecutors are supposed to make commitments and take action based upon objective, provable facts. And to raise money in a campaign on the basis that you're going to prosecute President Trump is completely unprofessional, it's completely uncalled for, and frankly is abhorrent.
When you put the eyes before everybody that everybody's going to be looking for Fani Willis, and you put a page out there for Democrats across the country to donate to, that's the best time to do it. But it then does invite the criticism that it's a political deal. This is done to uplift a political agenda.
In a grotesque display of her partisan intent, Fani Willis took 2.5 years to indict Trump, timing the trial to begin right before the 2024 presidential election, and forced Trump to be fingerprinted and pose for a criminal mugshot.
Fani Willis waited 30 months to bring her January 6th racketeering criminal case against President Trump and 18 co-defendants, and now she's demanding a trial in August, right before the presidential election in November. If that's not blatant election interference, I don't know what is.
This is a county district attorney. Fourth indictment, and now you're seeing a mugshot. Why is it that out of 4 indictments, the fourth one, now you're seeing the mugshot? It appears that this is for political reasons, that this is a claim to fame for her, and that she had campaigned on going after President Trump.
And Fani Willis hired her boyfriend, who had no prosecutorial experience, to be a lead investigator in the Trump case.
A former Trump campaign official filed the motion this week, alleging that Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis became romantically involved with attorney Nathan Wade prior to appointing him special prosecutor in the case and authorizing payments of more than $650,000 to his law office over the past couple years.
This is absurd, to pay $500,000 to apparently her boyfriend so that they can go after Donald Trump. I can't imagine that any fair-minded judge would look at this case and say, yeah, this is all on the up and up.
Wade's ex-wife submitted bank records showing Willis and Wade took multiple trips together during the investigation into the Georgia election interference case involving former President Donald Trump.
Did you take a trip with Ms. Willis in 2023 to Belize?
I did.
Did you take a trip to California with Ms. Willis in 2023?
I did.
Maybe we should give Fani Willis the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she didn't know it was a conflict of interest to have sex with an employee.
In 2020, Fani Willis was asked why Fulton County voters should elect her as DA instead of her opponent.
They deserve a DA that won't have sex with his employees, because they deserve a DA that won't put money in their own pocket.
Did you disclose your relationship to anybody at Fulton County? No, I don't think so. Are you aware that Fulton County requires you to disclose any relationship with someone that you're doing business with? I'm not aware.
To me,
That was stunning. Again, she's going after Trump for election interference. She doesn't even know her own ethical obligations.
In a decision handed down by Judge McAfee, he ruled that the Willis-Wade relationship created the perception of a conflict of interest and forced Nathan Wade to resign. The judge went on to say that Willis had engaged in a tremendous lapse in judgment, had testified in an unprofessional manner, and that there were reasonable questions about whether they had testified untruthfully about the timing of their relationship.
The judge calls out the DA's, quote, tremendous lack in judgment, the odor of mendacity. He says that the public speech she made in the church was, quote, legally improper. And the judge even says in the ruling, it may be time for a gag order on the DA.
So while, yes, this is about Fani Willis's fate in terms of leading this, there's something much more at stake, which is trust in the judicial system. So anyone who says that this is a win for Fani Willis, it's a technical victory, but I would argue this helps the Trump team.
And it has also been revealed that Willis and Wade visited the White House, raising questions about whether this prosecution is evidence of the Biden administration unethically coordinating these prosecutions against Trump.
Even more concerning now is these reports that we hear that Fani Willis and Nathan Wade were taking meetings at the White House. And what I really want to know about those meetings is whether there was an improper purpose. Were they trying to set the timing up so that it would interfere with the 2024 election? All of these questions need very serious answers.
Fani Willis has a history of partisan political activity, such as endorsing and fundraising for Democrats, including raising money against a target of her criminal investigation. In fact, a judge barred Willis from investigating pro-Trump Republican State Senator Burt Jones due to her political bias, stating that her actions were a conflict of interest with horrific optics.
I used that phrase, what were you thinking, where the prosecutor thought I could prosecute the co-defendant of someone I defended. It's a what are you thinking moment. If we are trying to maintain confidence that this investigation is pursuing facts in a nonpartisan sense, no matter who the district attorney is, we follow the evidence where it goes and ignore the fact that I hosted a fundraiser for the political opponent of someone I've just named a target. And I'm on national media almost nightly talking about this investigation. That's problematic.
She's not been the best at making some decisions from an optics standpoint. Even the judge, there was a case here where she was investigating the lieutenant governor down here, which they said she could no longer prosecute because she had a fundraiser during the election cycle for the gentleman running against Burt Jones, lieutenant governor down here.
And while Willis pursues a political agenda, she's failing at her most important job, fighting crime. Violent crimes, homicides, burglaries, car theft, and shoplifting have skyrocketed in Atlanta under Willis's watch.
Fani Willis has diverted way too many resources in the Fulton County DA's office to go after Trump, Trump's top aides, Trump's lawyers, Trump supporters, and at the same time, she's let crime get out of control in Fulton County, Georgia, and Atlanta, Georgia, and that includes murders, carjackings, and many other violent crimes.
Up next, the George Soros-backed Manhattan DA, Alvin Bragg. Trump hater and ultra-liberal Soros invested $1 million in Bragg's campaign, and it paid big dividends, as Bragg has let criminals go free while pursuing a purely political prosecution against President Donald Trump.
These are people who are only being supported with, $40 million in the case of Alvin Bragg, $1 million from George Soros, only because of a promise that if you're in this position, you will pursue political prosecution of our opponents, those on the right.
Huge political donations from George Soros and his family members that have supported Alvin Bragg and his ability to get into the office of district attorney here in Manhattan.
Alvin Bragg in New York City, who's a Trump prosecutor, is himself changing dramatically the Office of Prosecution in New York City. He's not prosecuting. He's derelict in his duty to carry out his functions for the everyday law and order on the streets of New York City. Yet, he wants to make a big deal out of prosecuting Trump because he believes that'll bring him national attention.
Trump was in the New York real estate game for decades. Now, suddenly, Bragg finds something suspicious? It's politics, plain and simple.
Well, speaking as someone who very strongly does not want Donald Trump to get the Republican presidential nomination, I'm extraordinarily distressed by this document. I think this is even weaker than I feared it would be.
If I had to characterize it, it's disappointment. I think everyone was hoping we would see more.
I had hoped that there would be more in the indictment.
Here's where we're going to run into legal problems, because the indictment does not say what that second crime is, which is completely inexplicable to me.
Look at this. Mitt Romney, he hates Donald Trump, but he released this statement, quote, "The prosecutor's overreach sets a dangerous precedent for criminalizing political opponents and damages the public's faith in our justice system." Former Congressman Justin Amash, who enthusiastically voted to impeach Donald Trump, he tweeted out, quote, "I am stunned that any prosecutor would move forward with this. It's even flimsier than we were led to believe. 34 stacked counts bootstrapped to an unstated crime to manufacture felony charges."
Alvin Bragg has diverted so many resources in the Manhattan DA's office to get Trump that they have let crime get out of hand, out of control in New York City. And Alvin Bragg is the George Soros-funded Manhattan DA, and he has brought a bogus criminal indictment against President Trump for the non-crime of a businessman settling a nuisance claim. And Alvin Bragg has somehow turned that into multiple felony charges under some convoluted campaign finance theory.
Bragg's record as a prosecutor is terrifying. 7 NYPD officers were shot in the first weeks of Bragg's term. Hundreds of police officers and district attorneys have resigned.
DA Bragg is sending a clear message that it's okay to assault police officers. It's becoming fair game for law enforcement, upon law enforcement from people.
Rape, robberies, and felonies were up dramatically. Bragg has allowed a small group of 10 repeat offenders to go on a criminal rampage. The 10 offenders have a combined total of 500 arrests. It got so bad the NYPD commissioner blasted Bragg's soft-on-crime policies.
We've seen a number of reports where there have been repeat offenders, quite frankly. The New York Times had this report out yesterday, had to do with shoplifters, and basically a number of those folks who had been caught shoplifting did it again and committed the crimes over and over.
New York is a far less safe city thanks to Bragg. Politics, not law and order, come first with Alvin Bragg.
I would suggest that Mr. Bragg might want to do the job he was hired by the people of New York to do, which is to protect New Yorkers.
Alvin Bragg, in spending so much time and energy and making such a priority out of getting Trump, rather than prosecuting street crime, rather than prosecuting gun violations, rather than prosecuting retail theft, he's destroying the quality of life in New York City. That's George Soros's agenda. Get Trump, get these progressive prosecutors to ignore their responsibilities and turn the prosecutorial system and the system of criminal justice on its head.
This mother lost her son to violence in New York City. She blames Bragg's misplaced priorities for her son's death.
I think it is absolutely politically motivated, especially when Alvin Bragg is not prosecuting everyday crime that's happening here in New York City, where he is dropping murder and gang assault indictments against 2 of the people involved in my son's murder. If he would actually do his job and prosecute crime instead of wasting more of our tax dollars and more of the public's time going after Trump, maybe, just maybe, things can start to turn around.
Last, but certainly not least, Letitia Tish James. This far-left New York Attorney General, also funded by Soros, made it clear from the start. This isn't about justice. It's about a political vendetta against Donald Trump.
I'm running for Attorney General because I will never be afraid to challenge this illegitimate president.
We must do our job to ensure that the man currently occupying the Oval Office is held accountable to any and everything he has done.
As Attorney General, James said she looked forward to going into the office of Attorney General every day, suing President Trump, and then going home. In other words, Trump was already guilty as charged.
Letitia James, before she was the Attorney General, campaigned on a platform of, if you elect me, I will prosecute Donald Trump. That is unprecedented and it's abhorrent. Prosecutors are supposed to have reasonableness. They're supposed to be objective. They're supposed to follow the evidence. They're not supposed to go into an election advocating the prosecution of a particular individual as part of the reason that that person should be elected. It is the most political prosecution of its stature that you could possibly imagine.
Former U.S. Attorney, senior FBI official, and chief of the Drug Enforcement Administration Chuck Rosenberg wrote that Tish James' comments during her campaign demonstrate a prejudgment of the facts and a political predisposition to the issues she must now manage apolitically and dispassionately. She ought to fully and deeply appreciate that injudicious comments undermine her office and her cases, legally and factually. The heart of James' suit is her claim that Trump inflated the values of his properties to get bank loans. But the banks conduct independent appraisals of these properties, had no objections to the Trump appraisals, and were paid back every nickel of the loans. Incredibly, the case claimed Mar-a-Lago, one of the most coveted properties in the world, was worth only $18 million. What parking lots go for in West Palm Beach?
Well, here's the wildest one that's going on right now. You know the Mar-a-Lago controversy of the pricing or the
inflated value of the house.
The Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah.
The judge ruled that it was worth $18 million. It's 20 acres in like the most expensive real estate in that area. Like a house down the street from it, much smaller, just sold for $50 million.
Wow.
Even Forbes said it's worth somewhere between, see what Forbes said. I think they said it was worth between $300 and $700 million. And they were saying that it's worth $18 million.
The idea that Donald Trump could be fined $250 million and be forever barred in New York on the basis of a financial statement that nobody ever complained about is absurd just to state the proposition. It's not a revenge game. It's not a revenge organization. It's not an organization that's supposed to hand out retribution. The justice system is supposed to seek just results, fair results, reasonable outcomes given the conduct at issue. And when you have conduct at issue that nobody's ever complained of, that was sought after by these banks, and still sought after, you're really talking about an absurd prosecution and an absurd request for relief.
Judge Engoron's ruling that Trump must pay $354.9 million for supposedly duping these sophisticated banks is unheard of. Jonathan Turley of George Washington University Law School stated that the court admitted that not a single dollar was lost by the banks from these dealings. Indeed, witnesses testified that they wanted to do more business with Trump, who was described as a whale client with high-yield business opportunities.
In this case, when I'm trying to figure out, and I'm not pro or con, or I don't care about the politics, who lost money? Nobody. The bank got paid back the construction finance loan, and a new building was built. And if you're going to sue this case and win, you got to sue every real estate developer everywhere. This is all they do. This is what they do all day long, every day. So I don't think this thing will ever survive appeal, regardless of what the fine is. This doesn't even make sense.
When James is not promoting a political agenda, she's failing at fighting crime. Murder, assault, and carjackings have all seen significant increases in New York during her tenure.
Every single day after we witness video after video coming out of the Big Apple depicting horrendous acts of violent crime, all under the watch of Mayor Adams and the Trump-obsessed Attorney General Letitia James.
Clearly, politics and get Trump are James' priorities, not fighting crime.
This is a complete political hit job. It's been what Letitia James's entire mission. It's been a political mission to take down Donald Trump. It's not about helping senior citizens across New York who've been scammed. It's not about dealing with New York's horrible crime crisis, which is facing New Yorkers across the state. She represents the entire state of New York, not just New York City. There's millions of people that need help from our Attorney General to enforce the laws. but she is particularly obsessed with trying to get Donald Trump.
4 prosecutors following a purely political agenda. Justice should be blind, but these 4 are blindly ambitious Trump haters doing a disservice to America.
Justice is supposed to be blind because you're supposed to take an objective look at the facts, and you're supposed to take a fair and reasonable application of the laws and apply them in the manner in which it was intended to be applied. That is not happening with Donald Trump. It's not happening in a lot of his prosecutions.
What Jack Smith, what Fani Willis, what Alvin Bragg, what Tish James, what they're doing with these Democrat judges, this is highly inappropriate. It's what they're doing. This is Democrats' election interference. It's lawfare. It is highly destructive to our country.
It is clearly a targeted prosecution aimed to get Trump. That's what's going on. Get Trump. And that's not the way our system works. And that's not what our people expect of our elected officials, and particularly our officials who are in charge of our criminal justice system.
There is going to be a legal tit for tat going forward between the political parties after these Democrats brought these unprecedented indictments against a former president and the leading presidential candidate. And this is not going to go well for our country, because that means when Republicans are in office, they're going to bring indictments against Democrats, and when Democrats are in office, they're going to bring indictments against Republicans, and that is how a country fails.
Real justice, honest justice, blind justice. Our Constitution demands it. These 4 prosecutors are shredding it. America deserves better.